DNVR Draft Pod, baby. We're doing it. Talking about Sean Payton's comments on needs and who the best candidates in this draft class would be at Joker, safety, linebacker. Plus, got Justin Michael on giving us all his insights on the Mountain West prospects, starting with Ashton Jeanty and a whole lot more starting now. We're doing it, baby. And I've got my guy, Justin Michael, joining us for this one. Not in the Toyota Lounge, but shout out always to Toyota. Come join us in the Toyota chat. Leave us a thumbs up. Really excited for this one. It's just us, Justin. It's just us. You're not in New Orleans. I'm not in New Orleans. But the love of draft, the love of ball is still here, as always. So happy to do this with you. It's been a while, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Been busy covering a lot of hockey, covering a lot of college hoops, a lot of late night games between 8:30 hockey games and 9 p.m. basketball. But
that's right.
I'm good, man. Somebody's got to work around here. Everybody else is having fun in New Orleans out at the Super Bowl. Somebody's got to make sure we still get some stuff done. No, they're killing it. I'm excited to be back, though.
Yeah, big time. I was too, and I kind of made this a nice little J-Mike show. I was remembering about all your like off-season Ashton Jeanty takes, and then I was remembering about your Jahmyr Gibbs takes way back when. So we're gonna get into it. Why do you have such an affinity for these backs, and why have you been right once? Could you be right again? But enough glazing for one segment, J-Mike. That's what the kids say, you know. Let's get into these Sean Payton, Kay Adams comments. Obviously, Broncos pod guys talked about it yesterday. We're here to focus more on the prospects that would fit the bill of what Sean and Kay were talking about yesterday. Look, if you're new around here, the Joker position, we've already done multiple pods on it. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but it was nice to hear that confirmed, reaffirmed by Sean Payton. And there's a lot of guys, especially in this really nice tight end class that shined at the Senior Bowl, that you can pick from. What's intriguing is I think the receiving running backs, that's a much, much shorter list. And then J-Mike, you're the veteran reporter around here. How seriously do you take these comments? Like, how much do you read into the veteran wide receiver stuff and that being not a must-have, but maybe a need? Like, what was your take on it all before we get into these prospects?
I mean, there's always a little bit of gamesmanship involved in this process, right? Like, I don't think it's a strategic advantage for Sean Payton to go out and say, this is exactly what we're going to target in free agency. This is our biggest priority in this draft class. You'll give some hints. There'll be some honesty rooted within those statements, but I take everything he says with a grain of salt, because while I do think that it is a nod of respect to the receivers that they have on the roster, and I think that he's really grown to appreciate Cortland Sutton, and I think, they're excited about Mims and some of these younger guys. It's one of those, like, if somebody's available at the right price, like, very clearly that's a position they can afford to add talent. And he didn't downright say, no, that's not a position that we don't need. I think it's just a little bit of the truth's probably somewhere in the middle with pretty much all of this. The thing that stood out to me, though, and that was most validating, was that they don't, in his estimation, have the Joker on the roster right now. I think there's a lot of speculation, especially because they move Marvin Mims around and they have him in the backfield at times. And like, he loves those Swiss Army knife type players, guys that can do a million different things, but they're looking for more versatility, which I think is intriguing with this current draft class.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, obviously that's not there at tight end. Yeah, if you're Jaleel, maybe you don't feel awesome as being the receiving back if that's getting brought up, because that should be his role, right? If nothing else, he could be your Joker type. Maybe he's too much of a Joker type. Obviously, everyone knows about Tyler Warren. We've talked about Colston Loveland plenty, though I think, if you're talking Joker specifically, that's a guy that fits as well as anyone. I mean, he truly is a wide receiver in a tight end's body. The way he was used at Michigan was really intriguing. And, I think Sean will appreciate someone who's been coached by Harbaugh and has some of that refinement as a blocker coming from more of a pro style scheme. Harold Fannin, our guy from Bowling Green, G5 stud. If he's not a Joker, I don't know what he is. Like, he's more of a Joker than he is a tight end, right? He's more of a Joker than he is an H-back.
Is he an NFL tight end? I don't know, but he's right. Definitely a Joker.
100%. And then, Elijah Arroyo from Miami certainly fits that bill. I'd say Jake Brinkstool, the Clemson versatile tight end, fits that bill. And then there's some more classic inline guys that, yes, they give you, I think of like Mason Taylor. Like Mason Taylor, when I watch him at LSU, he reminds me a lot of Trey McBride, coming out of CSU as more of a complete inline, well-rounded tight end.
That must be why I like him so much, because I'm infatuated with Mason Taylor.
He's really good. It's also crazy how his stats are like very underwhelming. And yet, if you watch LSU, if you watch the SEC every Saturday like we do, he pops every single time you're watching that team.
It just felt like he was open all the time.
Yes,
and he's
100%.
He's sure-handed, and I almost like that his stats aren't crazy, because I think he might slide a little bit in the draft because of it, and he doesn't have all the tread on the tires. He might be a steal. But yeah, he's not really
true steal.
I don't think a Joker, or he's more of a traditional tight end. Same with like Gunnar Helm of Texas and a couple of these guys. But
right, even
the depth
Terrence
of this
Ferguson
group is exciting.
Dude, it's really exciting. It's exciting we have two Colorado kids. And yeah, there's just, go down the line. Brant Kuthi, a guy who we've talked about on this podcast. Jesus, J. Mike, you were a young
3
pup.
years ago.
Yeah, I think pre-COVID we might have been talking about Kuthi. That's how long he's been around. Utah tight end, really more of a truly an H-back, truly a Joker type. You see how the medicals check out, but that's another guy. Running back, as we mentioned, boy, that list slims down a lot. Brashard Smith, I'm contractually obliged to mention the SMU running back, the former Miami wide receiver. So that description alone tells you he's literally a former wide receiver, and he was showing that in receiving drills at the Senior Bowl, where he was putting, linebackers, safeties in a bind in those one-on-ones. After that, we've talked about Savion Williams, right? The TCU big wide receiver who's also had carries as a running back. He's been used in the return game. That guy fits the bill completely. After that, I don't know, J. Mike, have we talked enough Travion Henderson? Does he fit that type?
I think he might. Henderson's play in the college football playoff really intrigued me.
Mind blowing.
I just kind of felt, and obviously, like, it's easy to look at the big runs, but I just felt like all season with him and Judkins, they both was kind of just he's good, solid performance. But I was just kind of waiting for those, we're gonna take this game by the throat moment, and man, he had some big explosive runs. I think he's a better pass catcher than I maybe gave him credit for at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
You could talk me into it.
Yeah, and I guess he's got the receiving chops. Just look at the playoff tape, and you can see the impact he has just getting the ball in his hands with open space and how many house calls he had, right? how many big plays he had. But Brashard Smith is a different Joker type of equation because once you flex him out the backfield, all of a sudden that linebacker, if you're in man, who had to follow him, well, they're in trouble because this guy literally was playing wide receiver 2 years ago at the U. So it presents a different kind of conundrum than a good receiving back, but not a converted wide receiver, right? You feel me on the refinements as routes and what have you. And then after that, I don't know. There's a lot of good receiving backs, right? We could talk Cam Scatterbo. You could talk, I don't know, Devin Neal. You name it. Caleb Johnson actually is decent as a receiver. It's what I like about Omarion Hampton. But I don't know if I'd quite classify him as jokers. Maybe Marcus Yarns, the Delaware kid who did some stuff at the Senior Bowl. But that list really slims down. So that's where... it's not like there's a ton in this free agency class either.
It's a tough role to fill in general, but especially this year. I mean, a Jahmyr Gibbs type obviously would have been perfect for the Denver Broncos needs this year. I like Devin Neal. I wonder if he has the explosiveness to get away from NFL defenders. I think he's shifty in the open field. He's a thick guy. He's got good contact balance. Like I like a lot of that. And I think you could flex him out, and they did some of that at Kansas. Maybe like a DJ Giddens of Kansas State, but maybe I'm reaching too hard because of what we saw from Darren Sproles. They have somewhat of a similar skill set. That might be a lazy comp though, admittedly. But I think he has the explosiveness to fit it. I don't know if he's that refined as a route runner. He's more of like a screen guy from what I've seen in terms of his background. Right. But you could talk me into, or we could coach this guy up, and he has that athletic ability. But yeah, I mean, like Scatterbo, maybe, but he's another guy again. Is he going to be able to break off those same type of plays? Mm-hmm. Maybe yes, because he did it against Texas in the CFP. Right. But
fair point.
I don't know. He's a guy I've seen in person, and while he's clearly a very versatile athlete and he's got a great background and he did it all for Arizona State, it was such a fun story. Like when I saw Scatterbo in Fort Collins, he doesn't fly off or Ashton Jeanty has me standing at, getting out of my seat when I see him in person. Scatterbo, it's like, yeah, man, that dude plays hard as hell. I don't know if he's going to be able to take that type of beating and break some of the arm tackles that he was breaking in college football, though.
Those are great insights. I forgot you, of course, saw him live. And then you wonder, do you get more creative? Obviously, you talked about Marvin Mims, and basically, like, he's a returner who you just put the ball in his hands, Is that more how you think of this Joker? And Mims was used out the backfield. And I wonder, Jalen Royals, who we'll talk about later, he's kind of labeled as a bit of a baby Debo in some ways, right? He's got some of that build and traits. The Utah State wide receiver, of course, who just shined at the Senior Bowl. I don't know. Am I reaching there? I mean, it's after Savion and Brashard.
I mean, he didn't do a ton of that at Utah State just because that's not the design of the offense. But
right.
No, like I think you could move him. He has success outside, but I think you can put him inside, and I think you could do like some jet motion type stuff with him. Just get the ball in his hands. He's a good runner. He's really athletic. He's shifty. He's strong. He's hard to bring down. So I don't think you're far off at all.
That's a fun one. And then I compiled a little list of guys with returning ability from their college days. Emeka Egbuka returned kicks as a freshman. Matt Golden, the Texas star, who everyone loves Matt Golden all of a sudden. Talk about, prospect fatigue, J-Mike. He's experiencing the opposite. Like, everyone's on Golden right now. Isaiah Bond, surprised to see, just one kick return his entire college career. But to me, he could fit that mold, right? Like, Bond's just use him however.
He can certainly run well enough to do it. I mean, obviously, there are other elements that factor into being a successful return guy, just in terms of what type of vision do you have in the open field. I think it takes a different type of toughness and craziness to be a guy that returns kicks as well. Maybe he doesn't have that element to him. I'm not trying to, I don't know. I didn't cover him in person, but I was a Bama guy. I watched him a lot. He's not a guy that screams toughness to me, but that also might be an unfair assessment from a million miles away on my part. But just in terms of athleticism, yeah, without a doubt, could say the same thing about some of the Mountain West guys we're going to talk about. Like Tory Horton's really
Dude.
dangerous in the return game. And obviously he's coming off of the knee injury, and that's going to make him fall. But we'll get more into him, and we'll get more into Ricky White from UNLV, another guy who's, I think, going to be a special teams star, not just in the return game, but he blocks kicks. Like, he'll go out there and make an impact for you in that element too. But I think leaning into these guys that maybe aren't quite as refined to be, a first round wide receiver or something like that, but can be a day one contributor and potentially a high impact guy for you in special teams. That's something that I think they can prioritize, because the special teams unit was largely sound this past year, aside from the Chiefs debacle, obviously.
Yeah.
It's been a long time though since we've felt like we've had a real game breaker at returner, or even a guy like David Bruton on the kick coverage game, where it's just like, man, that guy's a stud. A Kayvon Webster, a David Bruton, just somebody that's maybe not the flashiest, but makes plays for you. And I think there's a lot of those guys in this class.
100%. There's actually some guys who might even fit that bill on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about what Sean said with linebackers and safety as well. I'm seeing the Toyota chat fill up. Thank you all. Leave us a thumbs up. We'll do all of that on the other side. And J Mike, you know this as well as anyone. Life, comes at you fast. J Mike, all of a sudden, he's covering some hockey. He's doing his thing. It's always tough. And life comes at you fast. It's you gotta be thinking on your toes. That's exactly right. And there's no better way at the end of a long day to choose chill with Coors Light. You know it. It's the Colorado lager through and through. Goes down so easy. Feels so good on me. Nothing better than sitting down at the DNVR bar and enjoying a nice, chilled Coors Light. I was at the bar last time. They asked me, draft or can, and I got a silver bullet. The mountains were so damn blue. It went down so smooth. It was so good. So Coors Light, you know what to do. It's choose chill this winter and reach out for Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And of course, our friends at Bet365, where right now you can bet on anything and everything Super Bowl wise. They are an official partner of the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche. You can find odds for the first overall pick. You can find odds for the big game. I really like both teams to convert a fourth down at plus 150. Last I was looking at it, the only place where you can use our code DNVR365 QR code right there. Link in the description. Check it out. Sign up. And new users, bet $5 your first bet. Get $150 in bonus bets. Win, lose, or draw. Nothing better than that. And it's also, of course, the only place you can find DNVR's custom bets with our teams boosted up. Nothing better than that. Must be 21 plus, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay.
That's awesome value, by the way. Plus 150 for both teams to convert these offenses.
That's what I'm saying.
The Eagles are a lock. And if the Chiefs get any type of fourth and short.
The only way that doesn't come through in the Super Bowl is if basically, it's a blowout and the Chiefs never get around to having a
it's like you literally just never reach for it down, because a blowout could help you the other way because the other team has incentive to go for it. But
right,
I love that. That's great value.
I thought so too, man. Bet365, they always have us covered on this stuff. J-Mike, last week's pod, we talked about safeties, since Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah had mocked safeties to the Broncos at 20th overall. One giving them Nick Enuari, the big safety out of South Carolina, kid I love, and Malachi Starks, another kid who we've been talking about on this pod for 3 years for sure, because he played maybe his first game as a true freshman in a non-conference big matchup, and
I believe
had a big interception. And we were like, oh yeah, mark this kid down for 25. Like, he's set and forget. We didn't talk about other safety options or even a Jahad Barron, the kind of do-it-all nickel out of Texas. I think he could play as an outside corner. I think he could be, certainly a nickel corner. Maybe does bring some of that toughness as a safety and can fill in somewhat there. What would your thoughts be on that? I mean, if Barron pans out, Moss, PS2 and Barron could have a no-fly zone type upside as your three corners in this defense.
Be three guys that can really run, three guys that you could play press coverage with and feel comfortable. I mean, obviously that was kind of a factor when Moss went down this year. Denver wasn't able to play man with the same type of success as they had, when Moss and PS2 are out there. It makes sense. You're always going to drop down a level when you lose a guy of his caliber, but I think his versatility is really intriguing, and I think he's got a skill set that translates in this defensive system, which is something you've got to consider, because if you're going to play in this Broncos defense, it's going to be aggressive. You're going to be on an island at times, and you're going to have a lot of individual responsibility. It's not a lot of soft zone. We're just going to drop back and come up and make the ties. You make that play, you better be in coverage, or we're giving up 6.
100%. And then you've got some more sturdy vets. Andrew McBuka, who transferred from Clemson to Texas and had a big interception at the end of the Arizona State game. He's solid. Billy Bowman Jr., the Oklahoma safety, he's been a leader for that Venables defense for 2 years and was there before that as a standout in Alex Grinch is defense. Dan Jackson, the other safety at Georgia. He's a 5-year player, stayed with the Dogs, finally got his starting opportunity in his 5th year, and he really shined. He played well at the Senior Bowl too. Rod Moore, famously known as the guy, one of the flag guys in that whole debacle at Ohio State. Very solid safety for Michigan. So, after those top guys, and I think really Starks and Uwari, Barron would be your only candidates at 20th overall. You do have some solid veterans who could fill out that secondary for sure. But I know the chat's interested to get into some linebackers, J. Mike. And let me start here. I watched some Jihad Campbell to prep for this episode. I've mentioned him before. I like Campbell. Played great against LSU, had some big plays, had a big interception against Georgia and Carson Beck. Moves really well in coverage. Watched a little more of him this morning, though. I don't know. There's something about this guy coming downhill as a run defender, and I couldn't find a cut-up of the Oklahoma game, so I just watched the extended highlights, and boy, I was disgusted because every big play that Oklahoma offense had, he's getting his ass blocked 10 yards downfield, or he's not, he's rushing the passer and just gets stonewalled and has zero impact on the pass. You're a Bama guy. Put me on the straight and narrow with Jihad Campbell. Buying or selling worth the 20th pick for the Broncos?
You could talk me into it, but he does leave a lot to be desired. Goodness, in the run stopping game, like you mentioned, I think what you like most about him is his range, sideline to sideline, in particular in pass coverage. He's shown good ball skills. He's got good instincts. He's made some big plays in some big moments. He disappears for long stretches, and throughout this season, Bama just really got worked in their front seven. I mean, even that Georgia game, they won it obviously in the end, but in the second half, they got their asses kicked in the trenches on both sides of the ball, on top of getting torched over the top as well. It was rough. Obviously Bama, that's a position they've been really spoiled the last couple of years. So the standard has been really high. And even some guys like Will Anderson, who are, true edge rushers in nature, were able to be really impactful consistently against the run. And I don't know. I don't know if there's enough refinement there for a first round pick. If he falls to the second round, early second, I'm all in on him. It feels a little rich for me at 20.
Well, and that's the weird thing is we can talk linebacker all we want for the Broncos, but if I tell you the top linebackers in this class, off ball guys especially, when okay, we could talk Jalen Walker, Abdul Carter. The part of the appeal is those guys can play edge for you, and you've got Drew Sanders already. I don't know that you need another guy like that. We've been down the Baron Browning road. Like, I don't know that you need another guy like that. Then all the other top guys, what do they excel in? Obviously, they excel in coverage, right? It's the modern NFL. You want a guy who brings you 3 down value. But then you get into the same conundrum as Campbell, where it's like, well, I kind of need a linebacker that's helping me upgrade this run defense, not a guy who can just drop in coverage and be a reliable cover guy at that second level, because I look at like Carson Schwinsinger, the UCLA running back who's got a lot of hype right now. That dude looks like a big safety, Justin Barron just popped at the Senior Bowl. He's a Syracuse converted safety playing linebacker. Well, and that's where Cody Simon of Ohio State, another guy who really shined in the playoffs, is a guy who stands out to me because his ability to come downhill is very intriguing. And Jeffrey Bassa, the Oregon kid who was on Fran Duffy's all Senior Bowl team, I think he's another guy who maybe leaves a little to be desired in coverage. He's not going to be Fred Warner, but maybe that's exactly what the Broncos need, and you're thinking of someone more in the mid rounds.
Well, very few people are going to be Fred Warner, to be fair.
Indeed. But he's one of one.
Could he be Josie Jewell, but slightly more athletic and maybe a little bit less of a liability in pass coverage? I think so. I mean, he was making plays left and right in the playoff. I will say, and maybe I'm not trying to be a pessimist or bring the vibes down. It doesn't feel like a great year to be linebacker needy.
No, it's trtrue. It's true.
There's not a ton of depth in this class. You look at the free agency market, and it's just like,
yeah.
You could talk me into a lot of these guys, but nobody. I mean, I know somebody in the Toyota chat mentioned Lander Barton of Utah, who is a guy who I could see like being an option for you. He moves well. I do think he gives you some of that versatility in terms of he's not a standout in pass coverage like some of these other guys are, but he's not necessarily a liability. And I think he's more consistently impactful coming downhill, setting the edge, just defending the run, all the stuff you need out of your backers. It's a class, though, that leaves me feeling largely underwhelmed.
Yeah, I expected a lot more in Senior Bowl week from Smail Mondon, the Georgia linebacker who's popped at different points with the Dogs. Maybe Danny Studsman. I mean, just vibes-wise, Danny Studsman, known as the guy who before the Red River rivalry said, I know one thing for sure. Oklahoma only fears God and Texas fears God and Oklahoma, which I'm still so confused as to what that means, Justin. But honestly, I describe him a lot as how you described Lander Barton, maybe more of a downhill guy and less of a coverage guy, even more so than Barton. Barrett Carter is in this class, right, out of Clemson. He's been a name we've considered. And I wonder, could a hybrid consideration, we're talking so much Joker on offense, could an Olufemi Oladejo, who really popped at the Senior Bowl, he was a off-ball linebacker, then became an edge at UCLA. Would you put him back at off-ball linebacker? Have you been there, done that with Baron Browning? I love Enuari. He's a big kid. Could he play linebacker for you in sub packages and be more of that guy? I don't know. Just some things to throw out. But yeah, I think your analysis that maybe it isn't the best year to be drafting an off-ball linebacker is fairly spot on, especially when we get in the weeds and talk through it.
I don't know. It's like one of those, I feel like if we're at this position and it's already, we're only 2-3 names in and it gets to the point of, I guess if you twist my arm, there's a world in which I could see a path where this comes clear, but it just, I don't know. There's nobody that jumps off the page is all I'm saying. Inevitably 2 or 3 of these guys are going to pop more than we anticipate. And maybe it's one of these guys that, has proven that they're impactful in coverage and they can learn how to be a more consistent run defender, especially with the right pieces around him. Or maybe it's, somebody else who is just like, yeah, he's not running a 4.6 out there, but Jackson Woodard sure does make every damn tackle. Like, I don't know. There's just nobody I love early on. Like, to me, it's a position that I'd rather flirt day 3 and take a gamble on somebody like that than to go heavy and go Jihad Campbell at like 20.
I do think it's interesting that Sean said that, though, because at times, because of this, I have thrown out, well, you have Alex Singleton coming back and Drew Sanders, who should be healthy. But at least from the head coach's own mouth, it is a position they will be looking at. And then he said the interior, right? Which we've talked interior defensive line a good amount on this pod, and I don't want to undermine that. But that's a conversation for another day. I can't wait to get into it, talk through some Mountain West stuff with J-Mike, talk through some Senior Bowl. I know I saw some wild Jackson Dart takes on Draft Twitter over the weekend, so we're going to address all of that on the other side, where, of course, I want to talk to you about Toyota, man. Toyota. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA for generations. Everyone who has a Toyota will tell you how much they love their Toyota cars. A perfect car for Colorado and getting lost in the mountains. So many trucks, SUV options, all-wheel, four-wheel drive options. The 2024 iconic Land Cruiser, for example, the Tacoma, you name it. The epic 4Runner, come on. And if you are trying to save on some gas, crazy out there these days. They have a lot more offers for low and zero emissions vehicles and more combined than any other automaker. So Toyota, man, they've been amazing to work with, a phenomenal sponsor, and it's just easy to sell them because they fit what most drivers in our area needs. And again, anyone on our staff who has a Toyota will not stop talking about it. Toyota, of course, the official automotive partner of the NFL and official vehicle of DNVR. Visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial. Corwin Toyota in Boulder. Groove Toyota in Littleton. Mountain States Toyota in Denver. Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora. And Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, baby. Let's go places. And shout out to us. DNVR events, go to thednvr.com/events. Check out our latest Nuggets and Avs takeovers. What a great deal. Get the bus from the bar. You got some bevies in the party bus. You get a sweet experience with the Avs. And I know Eric Lacroix is going to have some friends up there. Always a great time. Milan Hajduk showed up for the last one. So, I mean, what's better than that? And then, become a DNVR member today. Become a diehard today. The value is unmatched. Get yourself a free shirt. Get access to our awesome content. TheDNVR.com. Check it out right now. Special offer, less than $4 a month. So, and that includes a free shirt. So it's really like, I don't know, $1 a month. So yeah, check it out. Support your local journalist and this content we all love so much. Let's get into it, J-Mike. Question in the Toyota chat. Would you comp Jack Kaiser to Singleton? I honestly think Kaiser gives me a little bit more Josie Jewell vibes, where I think he's a little more slender. He's reliant a bit more on his IQ. He doesn't necessarily shine sideline to sideline or moving backwards, even though he is a smaller-ish body. But he's smart, and he gets downhill, and he's tough, and he's always making the right play. And once he wraps you up, you're usually going down, and he's going to get a tackle on the tackle sheet. So yeah, I think there's more Josie Jewell to his game than I see Alex Singleton. But boy, we've talked about
Singleton's
a lot of
rangier for sure.
Yeah, a lot of playoff standouts have come up on this show. You love to see it.
Ball knowers, people watching, they're locked in.
If they're watching us, ball is life for these guys and gals. Let's do it though, J Mike. I told you I wanted to talk Mountain West stuff. And And yeah, like behind the scenes, I'm in 2 Devy leagues. For those of you who have a life and don't know what a Devy league is, it's not just a dynasty league. It's a dynasty league where I can draft a guy that is not draft eligible in my dynasty league. I have one such pick. So, I've drafted Caleb Williams in the past. I've drafted Bryce Young. I've drafted, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jerry Jeudy, you name it. And I reached out in our draft pod chat and said, I need a linebacker this year, guys. Who's the guy to get? And we were contemplating Ollie Gordon. Does he have staying power? What have you? Running back. And you said, Ashton Jeanty, dude. Get on Ashton Jeanty. And I was a little reluctant because the national media hadn't caught on. But you were on top of it, man. And I got him in one of those leagues. And I'm going to look like a genius in that one. What was it, even coming into this historic season that Jeanty just had, that had you so bullish on the Boise State running back?
I mean, the big thing I think is just his contact balance and how fluid he is when he moves out there. He's a big, strong dude. He's got the ideal running back build. He runs low to the ground. He's got everything you want. Great vision, great patience. But some guys, when they move, it looks smoother. It doesn't look like he's really trying. And when he's going against 8, 9-man boxes and he's still letting the play develop and he's still making his one cut and getting through there and going for 5-6 yards a pop with the entire defense knowing he's the only guy on their offense that can do anything.
Yeah.
I've just been impressed by his ability to ball out when everybody in the world knows damn well he's getting the football. And it goes back to his freshman year where he kind of played it sparingly as the rotational back, but he still had 8 touchdowns on the year as their number 2 back. And then last year, I'm really high on him early on in the season, but they come to Fort Collins in early October, and I'll be honest, he runs all over CSU. He had 31 carries for 230 yards or something, 3 touchdowns.
Unreal.
He ran out of gas. And if he had 5 more carries in them, Boise State doesn't blow that game. And instead, CSU completes a historic comeback, comes back from down 18 points in the last 5 minutes. They hit a Hail Mary. All kinds of chaos is going on. But all I keep thinking to myself is thank God that Jeanty clearly has nothing left. They tried to, and he just had nothing left. And I think that was great about this year is he doesn't run out of gas anymore, guys. He's getting 30 carries a game after game, week after week. He was in better shape this year. He looked a little bit lighter. He looked a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. Mm-hmm. He already had the vision and the balance and everything you wanted. And I just think that kind of like Nikola Jokic, after a couple years in the NBA, he realized I'm really good. If I do these small things with my body, I'm going to be unstoppable. And I think he's a top 10 player in this draft class. I'm not saying he's going to go top 10, but I think in terms of talent, it'd be hard to find 10 players that are better than him.
No one has more Nikola Jokic comps for Mountain West athletes than you. You lead. You have the personal world record in that specific category.
I just like to talk about Jokic, and I don't get to be on the Nuggets show, so I got to find the chances to throw him out there.
Honestly, man, I respect it. Yeah, I mean, obviously the contact balance is insane. The balance, just forget contact or otherwise, is stupid. And it's a great point you make that the endurance he showed this season, the ability to always be able to perform at that kind of high level against stacked boxes is, it's part of what makes this season so unprecedented, at least in the modern era. Yeah, man.
Do you worry about too much tread on the tires at this stage? He averaged 250 carries over the last 3 years, but I went back and looked, and he had about 75 more carries in college than Saquon Barkley, 30 less catches though. So, their workload is fairly comparable. It's not too different. It made me feel a little bit better.
Look, once you write up the scouting report, something has to be in the negatives, right? So yeah, put tread on the tire in there. Is it a concern? Yeah, sure. We'd all love to every running back we draft be Josh Jacobs and only have started the final year. And, that year you had like 150 carries, like very light load, but it's not always realistic. I love that you did the research on Saquon because that actually is a bit more reassuring for me. Yeah, man, he's got to rest up this offseason. Like, no one had a more brutal workload than Ashton Jeanty in the 2024 college football season. No one comes even close. So yeah, it's there. It's there.
I thought it was impressive that he lived up to the hype too. Like he's a guy that became a darling, obviously, amongst college football sickos, was in the Heisman race. So, naturally as the season went on, he got more and more attention. And I mean, again, I know some people will look at like the UNLV game where he didn't have quite as much. He still went for like 150 and multiple scores in it.
Yeah.
And they were literally putting like 9-10 man boxes at times, just daring Boise State to throw it. They had no receivers. They have a quarterback who is a great game manager, great game manager, and made some plays, but like he was the only reason that team was in the college football playoff. Because when we're talking about talent disparity between Boise State and like the rest of the league or the other G5 teams, this isn't 2012. It's not Kellen Moore out there and they're scoring 70 points a week and like nobody on the field can even hang with them. He pretty much single-handedly carried what I would constitute as a fairly average Boise State team to a college football playoff appearance.
Right. They're not. If I told you top last 20 years, is this even one of the 5 most talented Boise State teams? It's not, right? It really isn't. That's not crazy.
Gianti's so good that like maybe you make an argument that it's 5 because that's just like a cheat code and his dependability. But I mean, yeah, when you look at the talent everywhere else, especially on the defensive side, like they were a good defense, but they're normally stacked with NFL prospects like in their front seven. And Hassan Eden's is a good player and he had a good Shrine Bowl. I'm sure we'll talk about him. But yeah, I mean, like all I'm saying is like when you matched up with Boise State, it didn't feel like, oh, CSU couldn't beat them or UNLV couldn't beat them.
Right.
But they had Ashton Jeanty and nobody else did. And that was the difference.
100%. How high do you think he goes?
I think he goes top 20. I think he's going to...
Nice hedge.
I think he goes in that 15 to 20 range if I had to like put a actual guess on it. I think he should go higher though. Like I genuinely believe there aren't 10 better players than him coming out this year.
Couldn't agree more. I think there probably aren't 5 more talented players in the country than him.
I wanted to keep it modest, but if you say it, I'm going to roll with it because I trust you.
40 time, what do you think? Because that's where we get nutty.
Yeah. I mean,
4-4 like a Bijan?
He's not going to run like a 4-3 or anything like that.
No, I would agree.
He'll run, a high 4.8, maybe a low 4.5, depending on the day. Like he's not Quinshon Judkins out there. He's not a burner. But I did feel like there are plenty of examples of him breaking off 50, 60-yard runs and not getting caught from behind. You're going to be facing better defenses more consistently.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did it to teams like Oregon too. So I think he should be fine.
Yeah, and I wonder what the perception will be if he runs a low 4.5 that anyone who knows football knows that's a very good time for a running back built like that. But, how the mock...
You'll see some dumb takes that come out, I guess. Because I don't think he's
100%.
not going to be the winner of the underwear Olympics. It's just not... He's just a really good football player.
100%. That's exactly right. The other big name out the Mountain West that, a lot of people have talked about is Nick Nash, the massive wide receiver from San Jose State. He won the Triple Crown this year, which...
Very quietly. And you would think that would be deserving of a Blitnikoff, but I don't know.
He didn't even lead the country in receiving yards. How's that possible?
I think he did. I think it was receptions, yards, and touchdowns. I think he was one.
And yet Harold Fannin is atop that board. So I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But maybe it's the regular season Triple Crown.
Or maybe they meant just out of receivers.
Oh, that could be it. But come on. That's a little flawed stat.
It hurts your case if you're getting beat by a tight end, though.
Hurts your case. It's true. He was at the Shrine Bowl. Fine. Came in just under 6'2", just under 200 pounds, 31.5-inch arms, which is on the shorter side, under 9-inch hands. Does him being more, I mean, he looked like a mammoth wide receiver, right? Like just Godzilla out there. Those measurements, he's more for NFL standards, at least, that's pretty average-ish sized. Does that change how you view him? And like, tell us about Nick Nash. What do you see as prospects as a pro?
He's a little bit tricky of an evaluation on a couple of levels.
Yeah.
He's a converted quarterback, so he's only played wide receiver for about 2.5 years.
Great point. Yeah.
And he dominated at it, which was like, I mean, he kind of burst onto the scene like last year, and I was like, wait, the dude that was playing quarterback 12 months ago, this is the guy that's going to dominate. He put up massive numbers. He played a lot bigger than his size. I was surprised to see those measurements because he was, if I had to bring up one thing that stood out about him this year, he dominated contested catches. Like there weren't 50-50 balls with him.
Yes.
He was really their only weapon out wide. You knew he was getting the ball and he was still going for 100 yards and a touchdown every single week. Now, he's an older guy, played 6 years of college football, so that's going to hurt him. His measurables aren't tremendous. I also wonder, like, he was able to dominate those contested catches against Mountain West corners, which admittedly aren't tremendous. There's a lot of talent that comes out of the league. It doesn't tend to be at cornerback.
Yeah, and this season especially wasn't a great
defense as a
Mountain
whole.
West
There was
corner.
nothing special. Nobody. There's no Bobby Wagners out there at linebacker. There's no Shaq Barrett's, wreaking havoc, or even like a Leighton Vander Esch. There was nobody like that.
Yep.
That was just a beast, and you had a game plan for. Maybe Woodard from UNLV. But what I will say about Nash is, I think he's really smart. He's constantly just seemed to make plays. I do wonder though, like, is he going to be fast enough to play out wide, given that he doesn't have a ton of size? Is he quick enough to play inside because he's smart? He's got that quarterback background. I think he could be kind of a safety blanket for a quarterback guy that uses space well and just gets open.
That's intriguing.
But I do wonder, like, is he quick enough, to be like in the interior? Because I don't see him being like a Julian Edelman type receiver in the NFL. So I do wonder a little bit, like, what is his fit? But I'm telling myself when it comes to Nick Nash, just don't second guess it. You've watched this dude play a lot of football over the last couple of years, and he makes plays, and trust that.
I mean, that sounds smart. Usually kind of not overanalyzing these factors that come in the offseason and letting the tape and their performance on the field speak for itself is the smartest way to go. Tory Horton, man. I mean, I think we've reached a point where at this point we are sleeping on a former All-American who has the return ability and thus the speed, has the size, right? I expect him to measure in at least 6'2". I think maybe even 6'3". Just spectacular hands, has shown a lot of, route running chops. I mean, for me, even in a talented wide receiver class, he remains a guy very much in contention to be one of the top 10 wideouts in this class. But he seems to be getting more and more forgotten the further we go in the process. So, I mean, obviously we could take this a million different ways. Few people know Tory Horton better than you. And I'd like to think I'm in the a pretty high percentile.
Sure.
Those people
if
who
there's
know
a
Tory.
club with tiers to it, we're in that top level. There's not
I
much
would
else
agree.
to go at that point.
I would agree. But I guess let's start with, do you know anything on how his recovery is progressing? Obviously, he got to be on the field for the Rams' last play this year, which I thought was really nice and a really nice gesture and shows how much this team meant to him, even though he missed the second half of the season. And then, yeah, man, give us the book on Tory Horton.
Well, there's a little bit of, there was some gamesmanship from CSU's standpoint. I think CSU and Jay Norvell in particular worked really hard for as little information about Tory's injury to get out as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not 100% clear. Like, did he full on tear his ACL, like his MCL? We just know that he had knee surgery in late September or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The last time I saw him about a month ago, he's still in the brace, but it looked like he's moving well. Obviously, the fact that, he was able to be out on the field for a kneel down, albeit, but like if he couldn't move, like if it's going to be a physical liability to him, there's no chance they let that happen.
Yep.
The thing that's encouraging to me about Tory, he's a really hard worker behind the scenes. So like he's not a guy that you're going to have to worry about him slacking on the rehab process. He's meticulous, relentlessly competitive. He's also only 21 years old. Like even playing 5 years of college football, he's just weirdly young. Like he'll be 22 in his rookie year.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of time to make up for this. And he's played a ton of football. He's experienced, but I think his upside is as high as just about anybody, especially outside of those top couple receivers. He's proven he's a special teams player, great route runner, sure hand. Didn't have quite as many deep catches over the second half of his CSU tenure as he did at the beginning.
Yep.
Some durability concerns at this point, has been dinged up a lot, but also part of that is because the target load he was getting. And also there were some times, like I think back to that UNLV game in 2023 where he's just taking shot after shot. I'm like, maybe don't go to the quick screen to Tory. Like, can we not get him hit in the open field 14 unnecessary times? I think you could bring up some questions about how he was handled and managed and all that. But somebody's going to get a gem. And like, I don't know how far he's going to fall because I don't think he's going to be able to run in the pre-draft process.
Yeah.
I encourage you to just watch his film and tell me that guy's not going to translate in the NFL.
No doubt. I mean, what if he was fully healthy? What do you think he'd run?
A 4.38. He'll run faster than a 4.4. Yeah,
100%. And again, don't believe us. I could not. That's fine. Everyone has the right to not believe us. Just watch him return kicks. Watch the big plays he was creating as like a sophomore, and then we can chat. Like that's fine. Yeah, I think, in a class that maybe has a handful of true number one outside wideouts, he's one of the few that checks off all those boxes to be potentially one of those. The medical has to check out, and how much does the ACL, MCL, knee surgery impact his long speed going forward? Those are the only questions I have, though. And Denver Rouch is in here in the Toyota chat. Sign me up for Horton Day 3. Yeah, once you get to the fourth round, it's like the benefits of potentially rolling the dice and landing a true number one wide receiver, the highest paid position basically outside a quarterback, far outweighs the risk at that point of using a mid-fourth or a mid-fifth round pick, right? Like there's just a certain point where it's like the cost-benefit analysis, it just those scales tip so much in Tory Horton's favor that you eventually take him just outside the top 100.
He's going top 50 if he stays healthy. 100%. Like I think there's a world in which he plays his way into the first round if he had a dominant enough season, and like, they were able to get him. You look at the 2022 stats at CCU, he's their entire offense. They're doubling him, they're tripling him. He still goes for like 100 catches.
Maybe he wasn't consensus wide receiver 4 coming into the season, but
it was
he was consensus top 5, I think, for most. I
mean, he was ranked as like the highest rated Mountain West player in the NCAA football video game or whatever going into the season. Like I know that. Take that with a grain of salt. That doesn't matter.
You're right.
But it gives you an idea of how people view his athletic traits. And
draft hype wise, he was seen as more of a prospect than Ashton Jeanty. Great point.
Yeah.
100%.
I think it was a real debate amongst a lot of people voting. It was for me. I voted for Jeanty to win the preseason player of the year just because I knew he was going to get an absurd volume of touches. Like he came back to Boise. They were going to do everything in their power to help further that Heisman campaign. One, because that's best for the program. Like that's the way they could compete, was by playing all the way through him. But two, there's like the optics of that. This guy didn't transfer. We're gonna do right by him. And I think there was some of that with CSU, which is probably why Tory got hurt, unfortunately. Like this is our guy. He came back. We're gonna showcase him.
Yeah.
He's gonna ball out and he's gonna play his way into the first round. Tragic how it all played out in the end. But again, like if you could get this guy in the 4th round, he's got top 35 upside.
Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Zero arguments here. In fact, I'm glad we could finally talk about it, because the further we go along the process, I'm feeling like I'm taking crazy pills. Like I'm the only one.
He's just been out of sight, out of mind, because he hasn't been able to participate in any of the. Right. He's a guy that would have likely been at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Game or one of these All-Star games. He's a guy that everybody would be talking about going into the combine. Is he gonna run faster in a 4.4? I would have bet my life on it that he will, because I've seen him do it 100 times. But I think he's going to be just fine. I like more than anything that he's only 21 years old.
Yeah,
because he's got time to work through this injury. And let's say it takes him 2 years to hit his full stride. Like, we'll do it on the most reasonable. Like, there's an optimistic world in which he's hitting the ground running by the end of next year and moving well.
Yeah.
Well, let's say it takes a little bit of time, because it very well could. Knees can be tricky. I still get him at like 23 in his prime.
Yeah.
Fine with me.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's empty the clip on Mount West guys. Ricky White, the third, stood out in the Shrine game. He's another wide receiver out of the Mountain West Conference that's getting some good buzz. UNLV product.
Yeah, he's a little less refined, I felt like, than Tory. I liked Tory as a receiving prospect better. But he's another guy that I think has versatility to his game. You can move him around. Proven playmaker, back-to-back 100-plus catch, or back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, I should say. Had like 1,500 yards in 2023. The thing that I liked about him, he produced with like 5 different quarterbacks over a 2-year span, and I wouldn't say that he ever had a truly elite guy throwing him the football.
Yeah. I mean,
you had some good players. Like Haji Williams threw a good ball, and Sluka was fine, and Doug Brumfield had success before that, and like it's fine. But I mean, it wasn't Kellen Moore out there. It's not Garrett Grayson or Derek Carr slinging him the rock.
Yeah,
he just did a good job of always getting open, making plays. I think he blocked 3 or 4 punts over the last 2 years, so he's in a team first guy. Like, there aren't a lot of people that are wide receiver 1 that are lining up as gunners and, trying to block kicks and stuff. I like that mentality, not to go like full football coach cliche, but give me a guy like Tory Horton that not only embraces special teams, wants to be a part of it. Give me a guy like Ricky White. And he's got a high ceiling too. Like, people forget he was a 4-star recruit that signed with Michigan State, really high athletic traits. Another guy that I think is probably going to be a steal and is maybe getting overlooked by some of these other top 4 or 5 guys.
Honestly, man, it's one of those drafts where I feel like, get me a Big 12 running back and a Mount West wide receiver, and we're gonna be doing just fine. Like, because those 2 conferences really churned them out at those 2 positions. Who else? We mentioned Jalen Royals. I don't know that we need to go over that unless you have any crazy takes on
Royals. Hassanin, the defensive end out of Boise State, had a nice Shrine Bowl. I think he's done a little bit to help his draft cause, because I thought he had a good season, but it wasn't tremendous or anything like that. I mean, you look at the production and it was fine. But I mean, he's a guy that I voted preseason defensive player of the year. So I just thought he would take over a little bit more consistently than he did, but he won a lot of his reps throughout the week. And that's encouraging to see against P4 competition. Listed at 6'3", 272. I just wonder, size-wise, like, is he a defensive end in the NFL? Could he translate as like an off-ball backer, maybe? I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if he's quick enough to be an edge rusher. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Like,
I'd almost go the other way. Like,
put him in the interior?
Put on 20 pounds, and can he be a 5-tech in a 3-man front?
That'd be intriguing to me. That probably makes a whole lot more sense with his frame. He's got the length too, so if he put on some weight, I think he would carry it well.
Because you're right, he's not like a bendy edge. That's not what I'm buying with him.
No, and that's just where I wonder. Like, but that's where like the reps this week are encouraging, because I think he just
Mhm.
kind of out-strengthed a lot of guys,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
that was a question for me, because
For
I
sure.
don't know if he even did that with consistency against the Mountain West. And there were some decent O-lines, like UNLV had a good O-line, CSU,
Mhm.
Wyoming's had a decent line these last couple of years. It's not like you're playing schmucks out there or anything like that.
No, for sure.
But I just would have liked to have seen more consistent dominance from him this year. His stats were fine. Maybe I'm nitpicking because I had too high of a evaluation on him going into the year, but I was encouraged that he ended strong. Some other guys I'll throw out, like Fresno State's Corey Foreman, Texas transfer, I think was a 5-star prospect at one point. 6'4", 245. I do wonder where he translates in the NFL. Another guy like kind of in between, kind of a defensive end. Maybe he's quick enough to be an edge rusher, but we'll see. Mose Vavoa, center guard out of Fresno State as well. He'll get some looks. Jacob Gardner from CSU in the interior. Yep. I think he'll be a day 3 pick. He's graded really high with PFF for 3 years, and he's a 5-year starter that's had success as an offensive tackle, as a guard, and as a center. So you like the versatility, you like the experience.
Yep.
Not like a freak athlete, like he's not going to overwhelm you with any of his testing or anything like that, but just a solid football player.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I love it, J. Mike. We could go for another hour, but our time is up. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys in the Toyota chat. Appreciate my guys, Riley Sorbo and Dion Smith, handling things behind the scene, dealing with some camera issues. Thank you all for bearing with us. We'll be back next week. Mad love to you, J. Mike. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.